And welcome everyone to this excellent special edition of the Wicked Weekend podcast. I'm, of course, one of your hosts for the evening, or I guess I am your host for this afternoon, as my co-host has actually joined us as another artist. But today, this is a special artist edition, and we're going to be having these artists talk with us today a little bit about their craft, a little bit about what they do, and just having a free-form discussion here and having a great time. So we're grateful if you're joining us here live, and if you're watching a replay, definitely appreciate that as well. And let's get into it. Let's go and just start with let's go around clockwise. I'll go and introduce everyone here. So, Doug, you're a great artist. Of course, you worked on Movie Men. Why don't you tell us a little about who you are, what you've done, and how you got involved with art?
Doug Curtis, yep, done Movie Men, worked on Movie Men 2, and also, I don't know if I should mention it, Nobody's Puppet by Jeremy Lott. He wrote all three of those. And I guess, I don't know where to start. I've always felt like I've done comics my whole life. I've just little things, personal things. The big thing is webcomics right now. Flying Ferret is my big one. I've had that around since 1996. Nobody believes me when I say that. I've been on the internet since 1996 in one form or the other.
That's amazing.
And it's now sitting over at Webtoons, where you can find all of it.
Awesome.
It hasn't been a consistent thing, but I managed to get quite a bit up there. So if anybody's ever curious about that, they go look at Flying Ferret and Webtoons. And also, I got another comic up there called Slammer, which been sitting in my head for a very, very, very long time, and finally getting that up and running. So, but I guess, yeah, I've been doing comics since I was a little kid. My brother and I would, fold sheets of paper in half and make homemade comics, and friends would share them and steal them, and
that's great, man. I love that. That's such a great story. And it's really cool to hear all the new projects you're working on. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a pleasure. It's kind of nice to finally do comics and get paid to do them. Rather than,
I bet. Yeah.
it's just a silly hobby.
Oh man, that's great. Yeah, that's the dream right there, isn't it?
Yeah. So
That's
thank you,
great.
Jeremy. Thank you. I owe you a lot.
Yes, and Jeremy always staying busy. I'm sure he's off there doing something right now, like most
Absolutely,
days.
yeah.
Yeah. But yes, well, thank you again for joining us. It's gonna be great to have you talk with us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And of course, we have Scott, who's not an artist, but a fellow writer like myself. But he's joined in here with his artist today, and he is here to chat with us. I don't know if he's up there.
I'm just here to confirm or deny anything.
Plausible deniability. I like it. Smart move, man. You never know these days. No, I'm just kidding. Well, that's awesome, man. That's really awesome. And actually, with us, we also have your artist as well. As I mentioned, Drew here. I'm shuffling people around here. But yes, Drew, welcome. Thank you. I believe we've had you on streams before, of course, and chatted, but it's been a while, so welcome back to the Wiccan Publishing stream here.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Oh, you're very welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself to maybe some of the newer viewers who aren't familiar with you?
Yeah, so I am the concept artist and general just production assistant for Scott's comic Wrath. I do the covers, like the standard covers, and I've done variants in the past, but we've been lucky enough to be able to have some other guest artists who want to do variants for us, which has been really cool.
And I've done variants in the past.
Let's see. I got into art when I was in high school. Both of my parents are art adjacent. They teach. My dad does film stuff and my mom does like theater costume stuff. So I was always in a very creative household, and then I always loved doing art, but it never really occurred to me that I could do art as a career until like I said, one day in high school where it just sort of was like, I was that typical like junior, senior, like trying to figure out where to go to college, and it's like, none of these schools seem particularly interesting. I don't want to major in math or science. And then there's this little thought popped in my brain. It's like, wait, I guess I could major in art. And it felt weird in retrospect how long it took me to recognize that, since my parents are pretty creative. But so my background is actually in games, but shortly after I graduated high school, I got reached out to by Scott, and he was like, "Hey, I saw your art on social media, and was wondering if you might be interested in helping me out with a comic." And the rest is pretty much history. So we've been doing that for a couple years, and yeah, it's not exactly where I expected to end up, and I may still branch out, but it's been a cool experience.
That's awesome. So you're kind of really getting, like you said, getting out there, working with different people, and kind of getting your experience under your belt there.
Yeah, I'm still pretty early in my
Okay.
artistic career, but I've had some pretty cool experiences.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And Nana, we have you as with us as well. You're one of our Wikid creators, and you kind of have an interesting process. And maybe you could tell us a little bit of how you came into doing art.
So originally I was the author of Starring, and that hasn't changed. I'm not going to be doing the art for Starring, but I am doing the art for my other project, Swevin, which is more of my, I guess, what I want to say, very independent. For the first time, I'm taking over not only the art now, but I always had the writing.
And so it was something that you'd wanted to try and do yourself, right? You wanted to kind of branch out and see, build your own skills, right?
Yeah, I felt like I learned a lot working with a lot of artists in the past, sort of the writer artist roles. But a lot of the reason why I decided to now do my own art for my manga is more for my creative freedom. And it's been just such the journey. So I'm just a little baby artist. Everyone here is a lot more experienced than me, but I'm actually catching on pretty well. I'm using Clip Studio Paint, and I have been studying just the basics of learning Clip Studio Paint right now. It's been, like I said, it's been quite the journey so far. But right now I am working on my original characters. I'm almost done my first one. And thus far it's taking me a while, but I'm not really rushing, sort of taking my time right now and feeling out everything.
That's awesome. And I love to hear that because, like you said, these other, they may have more experience, but every artist starts somewhere, and so I'm really glad to see you taking those steps there and moving towards building your own skills in your own art there.
Yeah, and I just feel like if I'm doing the crazy thing by doing both, then it's up to me to get it done.
True. Yeah, that's true.
So
yeah,
it's all up to me now.
No pressure or anything.
No pressure.
Oh, that's funny. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm really glad to have you with us here today. And
I'm really excited.
And then finally, we have our last artist with us today, Matt, who is also a Wikid co-founder here at
Hey, everybody.
And Matt, oh, sorry, I was just going to
on.
give a brief introduction real quick. Sorry to step on your toes there, buddy.
No, it's all good.
But just going to say Matt's here, of course. He does the art for Project R and has some other projects in the work as well, some other manga and comic projects. And so we started the company publishing our comic, Project R, which is a Roman comic. And so he's the first artist I ever worked with. And so it's nice to have you with us, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and how you get started in art?
Well, kind of like Drew, I always drew when I was younger. I tried pursuing college, but it wasn't really financially fit for me. So I had to just basically teach myself at that point. But what got me started into it was more or less, I was just tired of seeing the same thing all the time. And I always heard, well, if you're tired of seeing something, or if you don't see something and you want it, make it. So I started doing that, and that's what started my journey as far as a creator. But it did start in a different field other than comics. I was starting with more animation. I was going to build up demos and then start off with those. But the more I got into it and the older I got, I started thinking, well, a lot of storyboarding is like comics. So I figured that would be a good place to start as well. So I started working on a project that I still am working on, but I decided to go ahead and fix a lot of the aesthetic look and also the feel of everything, especially after working with Michael and learning a little bit more. So I've decided to kind of put that in the back burner to work on to work more on Project R, but also a few other things before that. And I mean, really, the more I see coming from everybody else, I mean, I do feel a little jealous of everybody's skill, but
Mhm.
it also inspires me to do better as well.
Interesting.
So
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking time today to join us, man. Of course, I always enjoy talking with you and having you on the show with us.
yeah, same here. I always enjoy talking with people. One thing I do got to cut out a little early today because we are doing some unpacking. So
Yeah, words to those who don't know. Matt just moved back in town here at the Wikid crew, so the Wikid brothers are united again. But yeah, it's nice to have you back, man. It'll be good to.
it'll be a lot. It'll be a lot more smoother process from now on. I
Oh
bet.
yeah, and just nice to be able to hang out again and whatnot.
Oh yeah, I've been too long for that.
Oh, definitely. But well, excellent. Well, thank you all again for joining us today. This is our excellent panel. We got a range of artists here and who've worked on a range of different projects. So this is really awesome, and I'm really excited to dive into this with you guys. So yeah, I mean, of course, like I said, you guys have quite a bit of experience. Why don't we start off with an easy one, or depending, I guess it's not easy depending on who you ask, I guess. But for those maybe new artists out there, or people who are just kind of getting started in the process, who are thinking about starting, do you guys have any kind of advice that you might give to those kind of artists? Anyone like that?
Basics. Learn the basics, man. I'm telling you, because when I started in college and I was like, all right, I'm going to start learning formality, I kind of felt as if like college treated that as too late. You know, it's too late to learn a lot of the fundamentals, and that could have just been where I went. So hopefully for college stuff, Drew has a lot more information. Personally, I don't. But that for me, even talking to other artists at Comic Cons, that's what they say. Learn the basics. And if need be, use a tracing paper and learn how your favorite artist did it. Learn their techniques, copy it over and over. Just don't copy their work.
I think that's always good advice, right?
Yeah, don't do that.
Interesting. No, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I could definitely see that working out. Now, Drew, oh, sorry, was someone going to add something to that?
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you're using digital art, now I know like there is a huge difference, at least that I have noticed. And if you're using digital art, my advice would be, if you're starting out, and this is something I'm struggling with now, is I tend to get a little ahead of myself, and I want to draw beautiful things immediately. You're not gonna do that. But my best advice would be, if you were like me and you have a 0, and I mean absolutely did not draw ever in your life, because I didn't, is to learn the program and to also not feel guilty for using the assets that are provided to you on that program.
True. Okay, I could totally see that. Yeah. Interesting.
Because for me, like, I feel like traditional art and digital, you can use a lot of traditional art techniques in digital, but digital is also very different too. So there's a lot of things to look up, and there's so many books and all different ways to start learning. But I would just start with the program and learning the tools that you want to use.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a lot of kind of stigma in the art community upon, like, what's considered quote unquote cheating in art. And honestly, a lot of that is BS. Really, whatever techniques you want to use to make art, digital, traditional, like, as long as you're not breaking copyright, like, you know, like blatantly tracing, you know, other people's works, or, you know, using, you know, assets that are not yours to use, that aren't public domain. Like, do whatever you want to do for your art making process. There's a lot of like using reference is cheating, taking a photo of your hand and tracing over it because you don't want to spend 4 hours figuring out the pose is cheating. It's like,
Oh, so
no,
many classic
work
artists
smart, not
use
hard.
that.
Really?
And you know, like using Clip Studio Paint. Now I can't speak for Adobe or say Photoshop or any of that. But on Clip Studio Paint, and I'm not the expert, but I have noticed thus far there is a lot of, and like Drew said, in the free domain, where you can access endless amounts of, and I mean endless amounts of brushes, 3D models. You know, these tools are given to you for purpose. Use them to make your life a little easier.
Yeah, and there's definitely
So-
something to be said for like Matt said, like going back and making sure you like tackle those fundamentals, because if you're not going to learn the fundamentals, you may struggle later on where not knowing the fundamentals is holding you back. But, you know, if you're struggling to get the perspective right on something, look at a photograph, look at, you know, a 3D model, you know, do what you need to do to learn, because like there shouldn't be those stigmas around learning. I feel like it comes a lot from, you know, just like, oh, well, the old masters couldn't trace, and it's like, well, that's not true. They had something called the camera obscura that literally like it was like essentially a projector that they would like trace the projections on the canvas for their underpaintings. So like these aren't new techniques that only digital artists are, you know,
interesting.
can
Oh,
use.
absolutely, yeah. That's
Super thought about that.
interesting. That's
Yeah.
so cool. That's
Yeah,
so
the camera
cool.
obscura is actually a really interesting thing to look into if you want to see how like these old classical painters, like how did they work so fast? How did they work so accurate? It's like, well, they were tracing over a photograph.
Damn, that's wild. That's really
And
interesting.
to sort of piggyback off that, my project Swevin, the one that I'm illustrating, is actually taking place in Seattle, and the talk we've been having, like this talk of going there, because I feel like I'm so deep in like the writing sometimes, where I had this brilliant idea that the only way I'm going to know about it is if I go there. And it's the same with the art. And one of the things that a lot of mangaka in Japan do, and I pretty think they might even do this in Western comics by now, is they do take real pictures and use them. As long as they're your pictures and you took them, it's free game.
Yeah.
And
totally.
and there's ways to alter your photos on Clip Studio Paint in a monochromatic manga aesthetic, that all you kind of have to go in and do is then fill in like tones and different things like that.
Interesting. Huh. Yeah, it's kind of like a manipulation in a way to make it your
So
own.
what we intend on doing is going to Seattle, taking a bunch of things that we want to do and putting it into the comic and using those photos.
That sounds fun, and that would be awesome. Actually, you'd be like a kind of really feeling a sense of where you're at in the comic.
Yes, I'm so excited.
I actually have something to add to this conversation.
Really?
Yeah. So back when Wrath, the first chapter, came out, one of our supporters, Casper, asked Emilio directly, like, how did you get the grass to look so uniform in this panel? And I remember he had this little reply that he'd had, and he drew a little picture on his screenshot, but basically he just said, I just went into my program and used this brush, and then
Yeah.
Yeah. The brushes and those kind, like you said, the assets and the tools that they provide in these programs can be really useful. And you'd be surprised like how often they get used in comics. I know it's like a lot of times for clothing, I see those kind of things a lot used for patterns and things, and
which I love, because
yes.
you can like, and I have like this book, it's called Clip Studio Paint by Example. If you're learning Clip Studio Paint, again, I'm sorry to push it, use any program you want, but find a book that's kind of, you know, telling you it's by artists that have been using it for years. Like, listen to them, they know what they're doing. and in these books you will just learn the program. Just read it 10 minutes per night, like a little section in the book. I know they could kind of be a snooze fest because it's just, you know, instructions, but the more you know on the program and what you're using, the things you can do with it and pushing it to its, you know, pushing it to what it's meant for. To me, that feels like fair game.
Okay, yeah, I could totally see that. Now, here's an interesting question. And Doug, I know you guys worked with Bellevue, Washington. Did you kind of use any reference images when you were creating your comic?
We mean Bellingham.
Bellingham. I apologize. Yes,
Yeah,
Bellingham.
that's all right.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Jeremy would give me photographs and stuff, and if I wasn't too sure about an area, I would of course use Street View, Google, or just you know, I wouldn't trace it, but I would just get an idea of what the area looked like, and I could pretty much assimilate, you know, what the view looked like and stuff. And,
okay. Yeah. So even then, using reference images can really be a help. Like, even no matter what angle you take on it, I feel like those kind of things are very helpful. Heck, I mean, even I know. Oh, is Matt back here? I was gonna say, I was actually just about to mention Matt. When Matt and I, you know, do Project R, and we're working with ancient Rome, and I'm a huge history guy, and so I go back and I do a lot of research to make sure that the clothing, the way they talk, the way they act, everything is historically accurate. Because even though it's fiction, I like it to be. I like those elements, you know. And so I'll provide. Oh, really? Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll put in reference images for Matt to use of like all these different things, you know. And so Matt, when he's drawing it, really feels that sense of being back in the ancient times. He can translate that into the comic better.
That's cool.
And this goes with, I guess, and this is a rule that I followed a lot as a writer, and I'm sure it's the same in art, is, you know, you need real references to write or draw it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't feel like that is a bad thing to have that reference in front of you, like you said you did, you know, with Matt, or to, in general, you know, researching what you're writing about. It's all art.
Right? Yeah, it's really research. There's so many different aspects of the process, from the art to the writing, that really does require research in a lot of ways.
I mean, it's the same concept for why I want to go to Seattle, because I feel like in order to write about something, seeing it, being there, living it, breathing it, is a great reference.
Yeah, it's. I read something actually in a comic not too long ago, and he was like saying, "Oh, why would I want to see this thing?" And the character sister was saying, "Well, like, you could see a giant spider in a book, and sure, it's scary, but it can never compare to actually seeing the real thing in real life, right? Because like actually witnessing or experiencing something can really, can add a lot of valuable information there."
For sure.
That's very true. That's very true. Now, I know you guys mentioned a little bit earlier, about kind of like traditional versus digital. Do you guys have preferences as an artist? Do you guys mix and match? Do you kind of lean one way usually? How do you each of you approach that?
I like traditional, but I've embraced digital so much now that it's pretty much my go-to now. But sometimes I have to go back and do traditional just to kind of get the feel again and stuff. I try to do watercoloring and inking and stuff, but I do love digital. I know a lot of people, older artists, like to give a bad rap, and I feel that's sad, you know, because digital is just easily accessible and correctable, and it's just such a great media. I mean, I love it. You know, it makes life easier.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
I think there's a lot. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I would say I think there's a lot. Like, I've worked almost exclusively digitally. I still sketch traditionally sometimes. I just like, you know, the feel of pencil, but I just, you know, was always so enamored by digital art when I was, you know, growing up, and was like, that's so cool, I want to do that. So I just sort of went that route. But I have a ton of respect for traditional artists, and every time I see, you know, someone, because it's like it's different, you know, but I would say traditional is a little less forgiving than digital. So I definitely have a lot of respect, and I enjoy like playing around with traditional sometimes, you know, like pulling out those Copic markers and watercolors and stuff like that when I want to mix things up. But for the most part, I'm a digital artist, and I'd also say to a point, digital is a little bit more accessible just because traditional is a financial investment. You have to buy the nice paper, you have to buy the pencils, and
Inks and
with digital, you know, if you're real hardcore, mouse and mouse and keyboard, you know.
Damn.
I have some friends who, you know, they got their start drawing with their mouse and
Wow.
you know,
Oh my
GIMP
god.
or
I
like
do
that.
with a
And
mouse
so
too. That was not fun.
Oh my god.
yeah, so like I would say, especially I don't use Clip Studio because I do about 99.99% of my art on an iPad now. But if I were to go back to doing something on my PC, I'd 100% use Clip Studio. I've used it
Procreate?
before. Yep, Procreate.
Clip Studio
Okay.
on your iPad.
Unfortunately, it's a subscription service instead of a one-time purchase. So I'm so used to Procreate at this point. I have used Clip on the computer when I had like a drawing tablet, but I mean I still have it. I've just like I said, I've transitioned to using my iPad for about everything. But Clip Studio goes on sale like 2 or 3 times a year, and it's like $25 to get you
I
know
got it for my kids.
so between that and there's some really affordable drawing tablets on the market. Wacom no longer has the monopoly. You've got XP Pen and Huion, you know, really coming in and disrupting the market and giving a good quality tablet that's not $400. So
won't break your wallet or bank or whatever.
Yeah. So I definitely think that like traditional is definitely a really cool. I have a lot of respect for traditional artists, but you know, digital's definitely got a little bit lower barrier to entry, and if you're wanting to work in the industries, whether that be comics or games or film and animation, like it's the industries themselves are shifting more digital than traditional. So
that's pretty fascinating. Yeah, I mean, I see more and more traditional artists kind of switching primarily digital these days.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's merit there. I definitely see what you mean there. Matt, do you? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I like a long time ago, I used to try to draw on paper, but I just never really had an interest. It wasn't until digital came around that I only really had an interest, and that's just because it makes it easier in a sense, at least for me.
Right, I can see it because especially when you're starting out, right? Because you have that flexibility, right?
Yeah, I prefer like and people who are on, I guess, like Photoshop can say like layers really are great because you can break everything down, and if you find like one little thing out of place, you know, go into
it's a lot more
that
forgiving.
layer. Yeah, exactly. But I mean,
and you
I
could
think
try different
eventually,
things too, you know. You could try different things like what would it look like with this color palette? What would it look like with, you know, this inking style or something like that? You could have those layers to switch to on and off to, you know, to see what looks better. It's wonderful.
And something that I've noticed too is when it comes to one of the things I struggle with right now is perspective. But something that actually helps me is flipping on my layers repeatedly and seeing what something looks like without something underneath it, or you know, something like that. And keeps your brain very active. But I mean, I think when it comes to constructing bodies, I want to try to learn to do that traditionally, because then I can get the concept of building shapes to a body just traditionally, and then I can express the body types that I want to draw on digitally a lot more easier. At least that's just for me. But
I can see that, and kind of getting those feel of how it would feel with that, you know, drawing on paper and translating that to digital.
Yeah, and if you're a beginner artist, there's plenty of books that teach you how to build a body from shapes, which,
Oh
I
yeah,
mean, you can
that's
do
true.
that digitally too, but I just feel like you need like the pencil eraser feeling that someone was explaining earlier. So I think depending on what you want to start with, you can kind of mix it up too.
Yeah, you're definitely not, you're not just a digital artist or just a traditional artist. Like I do
Mhm.
mostly digital art, but I still, back when it was more of an option, loved going to like in-person figure drawing classes and, getting that big 24 by 36 piece of paper and, Conte crayon and just,
Let loose. Yeah.
trying a bunch of different things.
That's awesome. Yeah, and actually, kind of piggybacking on this topic here, Zoo Emperor in the chat says, kind of asks, how long would you say it would take to switch to digital if you were kind of primarily a traditional artist?
Oh boy.
I mean, I'm obviously that's gonna be different for everyone, but
I can kind of answer that since I kind of switched back to it because just the feeling of it was a lot better for me. Like I do mainly inking and pencils, all digital. Not digital, traditional. The reason for it is because I like the feeling of it, and for me it's more of a connection to the art piece itself. It's going to sound a little dumb, but that's how I like to do it. If I'm not really feeling it, I don't like the artwork, because why do it if you don't like it, in a sense, so
damn, you're like that. You're like going Dark Souls mode on your art, man. No,
because it's what I like to do. I've
I
tried
get it,
doing
man. Yeah,
other
totally.
uplifting kind of things, and I like it here and there, but sometimes it just doesn't look right. And when I used to do traditional color, it never looked right because I wasn't good at mixing colors. And when I switched to digital, it took me personally for coloring, because I like to do coloring digital. There's a lot more freedom, a lot more, you could say, with the brushes and everything, a lot more freedom of expression for it. So you can find different techniques that work, and if you're not really liking the way you're doing it, you can possibly watch someone on YouTube or even looking at books and seeing how they do it. But for me, it took me about, I want to say, a year to a year and a half to really get used to it, finding what worked for me, and then keeping up at it. So this way, it just felt natural to me, because that's the difference. Where traditional, there is this kind of natural feeling, because most people, especially, I would say, if you're over around 25 or older, you're probably more used to using pen and paper when you first start. So it's going to have a natural feeling to you versus digital, where it's going to feel really weird, and you feel as if your brushes aren't really working, so you manipulate with them, and then it's really going off the deep end, because then you're doing too much all at once, when instead you just need to focus on making sure it feels a little natural to you. So this way, and don't be afraid to use that edit or the backspace, to freely get rid of a line or something like that. Like for me, that took the longest, because I'm so used to digital that if I made a line mistake, I would leave it or erase it instead of just pressing the back button. So
Yeah, okay. I can see what you mean. Yeah.
so there are little transitions that it does take a while. So, and to kind of go with the last question, I'm more of a traditional when it comes to black and white work, but anything in color, I do digital exclusively.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I know when I switched from traditional to digital, it was more about the technology at the time. It was making it more difficult. And I got to say, God bless Clip Studio Pro or Paint, because when I tried to draw in Photoshop at the time, I was ready to give up on digital at that
Oh my
point. 'Cause
God, really?
yeah, I was not getting the lines I wanted. I was hating it.
Mm.
So I'm just, okay, I'm going to stay traditional. But then someone told me about Clip Studio Paint, and well, it was called Manga Studio at the time, and I downloaded it. And the first time I tried it, I practically wept tears of joy because of these beautiful lines I was getting and stuff. So,
Oh
but it
wow.
was adjustment from going from
Yes.
paper to the glass. There was just something very odd about it, and it just took a while to finally adjust to that. But yeah, I couldn't tell you how long it took, but it was a great transition.
I honestly can say Doug is 100,000,000% correct. Like, Clip Studio Paint is a great tool.
Really? So
Like, I can't. I love it. I love it so much. I just praise it every day.
So would you
So
guys
great.
agree that like the software selection is pretty important then?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'd say like pick the tool for the thing you want to use it for. Like Photoshop is not really made for painting. It filled that need because that was the only option for so long. And that's why you get a lot of like, you know, artists who have been doing it for a while, like they're still using Photoshop because that's just all they could use. But more and more
get that.
people.
It's the same as the people still using the mouse today, even though we have tablets.
Yeah, just, you know, but Photoshop's not made for like digital painting or digital drawing. It's made for photo editing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's, you know, it's got a lot going for it, but it is
I know they've
important
made
to pick.
advancements now, but
Yeah,
but
it's like if you're gonna chop down a tree, you could use a butter knife, but it's gonna take you a lot longer than if you use an axe. So, like, but from that, you know, Clip Studio is a great program. I love Procreate. Procreate has a very different feel than Clip Studio. I know plenty of artists who use Clip Studio for more painterly type stuff, but most people that I am familiar with use it in a more line work based workflow. So I don't have a very line work based workflow for most of my art. So I really enjoy Procreate's got some really neat like traditional feeling, but it's a digital program.
I will say, for me, Procreate is all I use when it comes to digital. It's seamless, it's quick. I don't have to wait for loads. Even its assets are pretty well used, and they're now finally. I don't know how long it's been, but artists have finally started coming out with sometimes free assets that you can use, or sometimes you can pay them for it for commercial use. But for line work, when I want to do cleanup, it always works great. It is one of the best tools that I have for digital work. I mean, even its coloring scheme for being able to work with colors and even mixing colors sometimes, or overlaying things, it's one of the best. Because like I remember working with Photoshop and even Clip Studio, and because I have a shitty computer, it would always take like 2-3 minutes to load, and by the time it's done loading, I forgot what I needed it to do. Right. So it's like, oh god, I need something faster. And Procreate, when I got my iPad from my roommate, I saw it was new. I saw nothing but great fucking things for it, except for the people pissed off that you have to pay for it. And it's a one-time payment, and I never looked back. It was so perfect for what I need. And even its functions for it, to me, it's the best of both worlds as far as like Adobe and Clip Studio Paint. It's as if both of them had a child, and that was basically Procreate.
I'm gonna have to definitely. So I'm a new artist, so I can't speak. I'm a new digital artist, so I can't speak on what program is the best. Me as a beginner using Clip Studio, I have found it to be helpful, but I'm also very much shitty at line art. Like, I hate it so much. So, like, you know, since these guys said, oh, well, this program is really good for line art, now I feel like a push to want to try other programs. So definitely keep your options open too. And
yes.
And be willing to try new things, you know, don't be set in your ways.
And in all honesty, I'm not saying like Procreate's like the godsend for line work. For me, it still took a while to get used to it. It's just, are you willing to sit there and do the same line 20 times? That's really what I feel a lot of digital artwork comes down to is, are you willing to do that same line over and over and over and over until it's actually good? Or sometimes you don't need that. Sometimes you get that one line just right the first time. And that's always a great feeling, because even in traditional art, that's why Drew says it's very unforgiving, especially when it comes to inking. It is so very unforgiving, because even when you want to go back and whiteout, like use whiteout or if you're on paints using white paint, sometimes it doesn't look good. It really ruins it sometimes. So that's where having that importance for that kind of thing really comes in. But
it takes a lot of
beyond that,
planning.
yes, and that's for me with traditional. That's the main part, is that it takes a lot of like actually sitting there, planning where you want to start, and like actually stepping back from it, making sure it still looks good, because you can't zoom out like on your phone or tablet or a computer. You can zoom out to see how it looks really good, and then zoom in how it looks really big. So there are different things that you have to do with traditional that with digital, it is so much of a godsend for not having to deal with those problems anymore. And one thing I will say as a recommendation, because I've always seen artists do this, but I never understood why until I actually really focused in on it, why they were doing that. Sorry, someone's leaving my house. But the reason why they're doing it is to make sure everything lines up properly. And I remember watching a video where this guy kept doing it over and over and over, and I never understood why until I actually started thinking about why he was doing it. And then I saw the problem, and what it was that one of the eyes was just half an inch too low. And I was like, oh, so that's why they do that. That makes a lot of fucking sense, because when you turn something around, sometimes the eyes aren't settled to it and you can see a problem. But if you're just not focusing on it, the eyes will just play tricks and you'll think it's fine.
Yeah.
In the chat
And then
here,
Clip Studio Paint came out with Lasso, and everyone's problems were solved.
Oh, thank God.
Literally
in the chat
in Lasso,
here,
you circle it, copy, paste.
really
And
that easy, huh?
you
Oh,
just
that's funny.
mirror everything you just drew. It's pretty awesome.
In the chat here, Luna Eclipse says, I started with pencil and paper and then switched to Photoshop. Then Photoshop became a photo editing program, and now I work exclusively with Clip Studio.
Nice.
On my iPad.
Nice.
So yeah, it sounds like a lot of proponents for the Clip Studio out here.
Yeah, I've heard nothing but great things. Even when I first started with it, I just couldn't handle my computer. My computer just can't handle programs like that right now. Like even with Metabank, sometimes it's a little slow, but that's just because newer technology, older computer. So I got to figure out what I need to update and what I can't upgrade. So, but like I said, I've heard great things about it. Even with what Doug was saying back when it was Manga Studio, that was my first real experience with it. Manga Studio, I think either 2 or 3, and it was really good. And even in college, I learned Photoshop, and I learned to be able to manipulate photos that way, and that was really good. I just didn't like that like $400 price tag that they have.
Can't blame you there.
Cheap. You like to keep it cheap.
When you're somebody who's kind of making ends meet, paycheck to paycheck, yeah, you kind of gotta think that way.
Right.
Yeah, I did splurge on my Microsoft Pro though, Surface Pro. I did splurge on that. I had to have that.
I've heard a lot of good things. My brother, who actually got an art degree too, that's what he does all of his art on, even though he doesn't really do it anymore, which I found really dumb to go to art school and not really do art as a living.
That makes no sense.
I got a hot take about art school if anyone wants to hear it.
Hey, let's go with it.
I honestly, I think that going to art school can be beneficial, but you need to do your research, and you also need to do your research about what kind of degree you're going to be getting, because at this point, most schools offering a game design or game art degree, the industry is so new, relatively speaking, that most schools that offer that, unless it's like a really reputable school, you're not going to be getting a particularly good education. That sort of happened to me. Like, obviously, going to school is kind of like you get out of it what you put into it to a point, but when all of your professors have haven't worked in the industry for 10 years, you're getting outdated information especially in something like games where the industry is changing so rapidly.
Yeah.
However, the school that I went to had a great illustration department. So if you
Oh.
were interested in comics or doing, more like book or editorial illustration, like the illustration department was wonderful. So
Where'd you go?
I went to
Can I
Columbia.
just add that
go ahead.
I have been taking advantage of your storyboard education.
Yeah. I went to Columbia College Chicago. I honestly can't recommend it unless there's like a small selection of majors that I think are worth it. But just in terms of the cost benefit analysis, I think you'd be more served by going to like a community college to get
Right.
like a nice fundamental education, and then using like the money that you save going to a smaller state school and getting a nice arts fundamental education, use the money you save to do something like schoolism or what's the other one? I can't remember the other one off the top of my head. Just schoolism was the one that popped into my head. That's got like some very specific like focused classes. So like, for example, I think this was one of the things that I looked into after I graduated because I was like, well, I kind of need to plus up on my art skills a little bit. But they've got anything from like just general, lighting and fundamentals courses for concept art to like, let's show you how to use Blender, or do you want to do book illustration? They've got some more focused stuff. So if you're
And
like,
this is
I
online
want,
classes?
yep.
Oh.
So it's schoolism. I'm not shilling for schoolism. This is just the one that came to my brain. The way schoolism works is it's basically you can pay a monthly subscription or an annual subscription to access all of the courses. And then they offer throughout the year, the instructors who created these online courses will host like live courses that you can join. So if you're interested in getting like feedback and are willing to kind of shell out the extra money to get kind of in an actual like class. But I know there's a bunch of other
awesome.
there's a lot of things like that like that's my recommendation. If someone came to me who's like, I really want to do this art, what should I do? Should I go to art school? Should I not go to art school? Like I was very lucky. I had a scholarship that was practically a full ride. So I was able to go to art school and not be, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt by the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the case for most people who want to go to school for art. So I think pursuing something like, so you have a degree, so you can point at your degree and say, look, I have a shiny sticker saying that I went to college.
That doesn't always mean much nowadays, It's usually
Yeah.
about production, what you can produce, It's
portfolio is very important.
Specialized fields, college doesn't really seem to be a factor with most places you go to work. I mean, if you're not going to be a doctor, if you're not going to be a dentist, if you're not going to be something like that requires you to actually, I wouldn't say fully 100% know what the hell you're talking about, but actually you spending a lot of that time even doing that work for free, because they're kind of trying to teach you with that kind of thing that what you're doing is going to follow you home. So you better learn to do this for free. So it's a lot more beneficial for you to go to college for those, or if you can get an apprenticeship with more, I would say, technical things like welding, plumbing, and other stuff like that. That's what I've heard from many different like job owners and even people that I've seen and worked with throughout my years of just doing different jobs. Everybody doesn't really care about college education for most things.
Yeah, I think to a point there are some studios and some places still that, if you have a degree, they're going to be like, oh, you went and got a degree, but it is your portfolio that is really speaking for you. That degree just like if you want to get a college degree, don't go to like super expensive art school. Go to a community college and get a nice. I think the way it was phrased to me is a wide but not deep education, so that you kind of can. Because I would also say like there's a lot of value in like, maybe your professors aren't experts in your field, or maybe your peers aren't wanting to do the exact same thing as you, but like working with like-minded people and being around like-minded people is a very valuable experience when you're starting out. So if that's something that's interesting to you, like I'm at least not saying like don't go to college, it's not worth it. It's just like just weigh the costs and the pros and cons of what's worth it to you. Like I want to say that
that's how I look at it now, because I used to be one of those people saying don't go to college, it's a waste of your money, it's a waste of your time, and I think that was me being a little butthurt about my experience back in the day. So now I kind of grew up and started looking at it as what you're saying, just weigh the options for you. Do you feel
like
it's
I
going
want
to be
to
a good
say
fit for
that
you? Take the shot.
I want to say that Schoolism's annual subscription to like access all of their classes for a year is $300, which is a lot. But when you think of the cost of going to college for a year,
that's like 1,000% cheaper.
Yeah, so
I mean, Jesus.
So there are tons of resources on the internet nowadays that I think is making, if you are wanting to get into making art, there are a lot of options for you now. Instead of like maybe like, 10, 20 years ago, if you wanted to get into art, it was like, well, you gotta go to school or you gotta go find an apprenticeship, and those are pretty much your only options. But we're really fortunate, in the times that we live in now, that there are so many.
We actually are. You saying that kind of reminded me. I was over here at the Reading Comic-Con, and Walden Wong did a little panel, and he was taking questions, and I asked him, I'm like, what's the best way for a new artist to start looking into things? Where can they learn the best? And he didn't even say any of that. He said one word: YouTube. And I just kind of like, really? Like dumbfounded by it for a moment. Like no books, no nothing, YouTube. And I started thinking about it, and I went to his booth and talked to him about it. I was like, why'd you say YouTube? And he's like, well, really, it's free. It's cost effective. You can learn almost anything and everything that you want on that site by itself. And if you really want to get into the technicals, there's going to be someone there. You can find everything on YouTube for what you want to learn. And I was like, holy shit. And looking into it, yeah, he's right. I mean, sometimes they will want you to go somewhere else, like their website, or go to Skillshare for you to learn more, or
Skillshare. That was the other one that I was trying to think of. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's the one I thought you were going to say at first, but I mean, both are really good ideas. Even using some of those for certain things. Like there's one that I thought about doing for history. Was the Great Courses, where you can sign up for like an annual or monthly subscription, and you can have access to all their lectures basically. And I was like, dang, that's really good. That is really good.
Courses, actually, yeah.
I think it's on Amazon. I think that's where I first saw one of their documentaries or something like that.
Nice.
But I mean, yeah, nowadays there's tons of ways for people to be able to learn whatever they want. It's just
that's awesome.
You gotta actually put the effort in now. You can't rely. I feel like that's kind of what some colleges did in the long. For some places, like one of my classes, we just had to pass a test and it was fine.
Yeah, I would say that college is good for people if you're someone who really like loves that like classroom environment and the like accountability of having assignments. Because online classes usually have assignments, but there's no one saying, hey, this is due in a week and you're gonna, it's gonna be a waste of money if you don't finish the assignment. And I'm gonna
see you in person, so you better have it to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so that if you do opt to go the like self teaching route, you do need to have the what's it called, the discipline to actually keep up with that route. But there are things that you can do, like like I think there's a Facebook group for the schoolism courses that like you can join the Facebook group and post on Facebook and like have peers that, give you feedback. Or there's plenty of Discord communities nowadays that are arts focused if you're looking for that sort of community and accountability to say like, hey, this is a thing I'm doing. Looking for an art buddy who will help keep me on track. Find your peers and communicate with them is kind of my general advice. It's no fun to do things by yourself.
I think something that I have found is if you're gonna do the Skillshare route, definitely only do it for YouTubers that you've been watching for a while. Right now I kind of watch White Manga quite a bit. He's the author of Apple Black at Saturday AM, and he's great, and he's a manga artist, and he explains it in such a way that he makes it very simple, and he actually helps you learn ways to develop your own art style immediately, which I think is really important.
Well, not only
if
that,
you can find an easy way to do it.
Yeah, not only that, like she was saying with White Manga, I've seen a few of his things too. He'll even go over it as if like it's one of your first days drawing too. He'll kind of explain what the functions are and why you're doing it that way too. One of them that I do recommend, it's kind of funny, he's actually a teacher for one of the schools I was looking at here in California, the California School of Arts or something.
Did we lose you? Hello?
Oh, might have lost him.
And he's gone.
While he's holding that thought, I do. We'll get back here in a second. But there was a chat in the question in the chat rather from Jeremy Lotta a few minutes ago, which was the best way to learn is to write. To learn to write is first read. I'm sorry, let me start. The best way to learn to write is first to read a lot and next to write a lot. Would you artists say a similar thing about arting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much.
See, the thing that everybody forgets is that writing is art. So many of the things that you do in writing, you pretty much can't apply to illustration.
Yeah.
They're just two different types of art. References. We mentioned references. Yes, writing. In order to draw art, you should look at artists that you like and the art that you find attractive. It's the same as you go to the books that you're drawn to because you want to have that type of writing style.
Yeah. You also should push yourself out of your comfort zones too. A friend of mine is into Japanese art long before there were weebs, and I really took to that. I found that very fascinating, and I don't know where I was going with this, but yeah, push it out of the comfort zone. And
I usually tell people that word.
Really?
There are historical weaves. There are historical ones.
Google it. God.
Yeah.
I'm not a weave.
Of course.
I always cram on weaves.
I prefer the term otaku.
Are good.
Yes, thank you.
Otakus are much better of a term.
To me, weaves are nothing. They're the same thing as what the older generation called dweebs. They're the ones that nobody likes of that shit,
The word, when you translate weeb in Japanese, it goes into weebo. And weebo actually is the definition of a fetish. So don't say weeb.
Weird.
If you're using it in a Japanese context, anyway.
Yes,
I just like anime and manga, so I don't know what that classifies.
That don't make
You're an
you
enthusiast.
You're
an enthusiast.
Yeah, you're just somebody who likes something.
An appreciator.
That makes you an otaku and a lover.
Yeah, I was into it in the dark ages when we had bootleg VHSs.
Yep. Yep. When the only way to watch the Dragon Ball Z movies was that way. Those were the
Weebs
days.
are the type of weebs are the ones that pose as Japanese on Twitter, and they always write to
Oh,
their
no.
favorite mangaka from Google Translate.
Don't do that.
Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. Please don't be that guy.
Oh no. Oh
Actually,
no.
speaking of Dragon Ball Z, I found that as an obscure Sunday morning cartoon on like a little watch station, like back in the
Yep.
90s, and I started on like the Vegeta saga, and I had no idea what was going on.
You had no idea what you were in for, man. What ride you had just strapped yourself into.
I did not, but I wanted to know more. This was
Yeah,
fun.
that's how it was for me. My brother discovered it first, and I started watching it with him. And then it was kind of funny because growing up, me and my brother are 5 years apart, and we never really liked each other growing up. That was the one show that me and him could actually sit through together and just watch with no problems and actually have a good time. So
My
Go on.
first anime was Kimba the Lion, and I was very little. I was 3 years old, and my dad actually got it for me for my birthday, and he ordered it from Okinawa.
Oh wow, really?
So that was the very first anime I ever seen.
Oh, that's
If you
funny.
know what Kimba the White Lion is, kudos to you. You're a true otaku.
Oh,
Lion
man.
King knows
I'm-
what it is.
I'm like
It's
the
an old
teeny
one.
kid whose like first anime was like whatever was on 4Kids on Saturday.
Oh, my
like
God.
Mew Mew
Yes.
Power and One Piece.
Yu-Gi-Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that the one that Lion King ripped off?
Is that really? Is that what it is? Kimba the White Lion.
they-
It's not
thing?
that one? Okay.
No.
It looks like it.
it's kind of more opposite.
Really? It looks like.
Looks
like
no. Kimba came out way before the Lion King.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. That's what he's
but-
saying. He was like, I think Lion King ripped off Kimba is what he was saying.
They
Yeah.
were accused, but like they kind of debunked that, I believe.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
okay.
remember like someone was saying that like a couple years ago, like, oh, Disney did it again.
What it is
or
that
whatever,
it's a
but-
clear influence. That's what it is. They're paying homage to
Definitely.
the story.
Oh.
They've been influenced by it, and that's totally what it is. I mean,
And when you
like,
look at Japanese anime style art, they're influenced a lot by Disney
I mean, when
as
you look
well.
at a lot of stories and a lot of artworks, everybody's been influenced by something, and they're going to put it into
Nothing
their
is
work.
original.
Yeah. That is very true. You know, nothing is new. It's all recycled. I mean, that's a law in physics itself. So,
That's why
like,
I said when you're
me
when
and
you
Michael
start
were actually
art,
talking about this yesterday. There's a lot of influences from from different works that you see in everybody's work. It's just how you use it that determines how people see it. You know, if you have like 50% of your story being Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, people are going to see it as a ripoff. But if you have like less than 1% to 10% of it, they'll see it as influenced.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, just pick bits and pieces of things that you find attractive, and build it to your individual style from there.
Yep.
It's and White, like we were saying with White manga, he puts it into a perspective that makes it very simple for me. You know.
Yes, he does. He has really great hair tutorials too.
Yes,
Yeah,
the
right?
best.
Oh my God, you can use so many different hairstyles. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's Well, that's definitely good. It sounds like it's a good way to learn is to utilize those online resources, those different avenues of learning that you have access to. That's definitely awesome. Looked like in the chat a lot of love from anime over here. Definitely good to see that. I'm a big fan of anime myself.
Love it. Love
Yes.
it. It's been a huge part of my life for such a long time.
Right? Oh yeah, me too.
We're old friends. And just because you like anime and manga, it doesn't make you a weeb.
No.
That is
That's
true.
silly.
I will say, I didn't start off with anime liking cartoons. You know, it wasn't what I started off with. With me personally, it was, I think, the old X-Men cartoons from back in the 90s. That's kind of what got me into everything as far as like cartoons, animation, and just falling in love with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah. Now, in the chat here, Jeremy kind of makes a point here, and maybe you guys can comment on this, see what you guys think. But he says one difference between, say, novelists and comic book artists is that novelists can set the scene and let people's minds fill in a lot of the details. Artists have to supply all of that themselves. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. How many writers have we frustrated with?
Oh, I see how this looks in my brain. Sure wish it would look like that on screen.
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah, I can see how that might be tough.
I've often wondered, like, am I giving them too much or am I
Mhm.
giving them too little?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Right? I mean, as an artist, how much input when you're working with a writer, how much input would you want to have? Like, would you want to have a little bit of input, more freedom, or how do you look at it?
For me, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll say for me, it kind of depends on the subject. I struggle more with characters than I do with like more environmental background type stuff. So if you give me a vague description of an environment, I'll probably go crazy and be like, oh yeah, that's all I need. But if you want me to draw a character, usually I'm gonna want more reference or more just kind of a general idea of what you want, because they just don't come as easily to me. So yeah, for me, it just kind of depends. I think I err on the side of, if you want me to draw something for you, give me as much information as you're willing to part with, so that way I can make it match what you want. But if you're like, I just want to see something cool, well, then I'll, take creative freedom with that. But
Okay.
I think it just kind of depends on the situation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes a lot of sense.
I think for me, I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I feel like I've gotten a little bit better at that as I've been doing this, but just a little bit.
And I was just gonna say, like, I think for me, and I've been on both sides now, and when I was working with artists, I also liked when they listened to me, because I feel the script is one of the most important things when it comes to collaborating, because you have to go through your process to finalize that, and then they have to go through their process to make it for you. So I think, like, being considerate to your artist with references and the like is important. And I also think as artists, they should also listen to the writer, because it's also an image, it's also a style, and it's kind of up to the artist to show that. But it's up to the writer for execution. There's a lot of roles that happen that, if you're not in harmony, can fail drastically, and that's something that I've learned. I have went through the ringer working in collaborations. I'm not gonna diss it. Like, I have had a lot of good times, and I'm still doing that. I'm still not illustrating one of my other comics, because I still like to collaborate, especially when I am in harmony with an artist. But when you're not in harmony, oh boy, it will crash and fall to the ground and fire. So definitely make sure that when you're working with your artist, that you are considerate of them, because their job is difficult, and they want to please you.
Right, they're not
but
out to,
also,
yeah.
I also feel like that goes also in harmony with, I'm hired for this comic, and me as the artist, I, want to help this writer display as best as I can.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a big consideration for each other. There needs to be that there needs to be that between each other, this mutual respect, that that can take you forward, because teamwork will make the dream work in the end, as long as you do that together. Takes both of you.
I used to be more resistant to collaboration. I kind of like maybe it was a little pride thing, being solo. I can write, I can draw, I can do this all, But it also kind of made me lazy too, because I could kind of like, I don't want to draw that, and then not push myself. So collaborating with Jeremy, for example, has been great. I mean, he's great. He has very clear vision, and it made me push myself, and I just really appreciate that. And it made me better on my solo work too, because then I'm like, don't be lazy. What would Jeremy do?
WWJD, what would Jeremy do?
No, and I really I feel like if you worked in collaborations and you realize, and this is what happened with me, is that I kind of do like it to some percentage in a comic where I'm not willing to give as much creative freedom. I kind of tend to be a control freak when it comes to my work, and I know that's a flaw. So I have decided that in the comic where I'm a control freak, I'm taking it over. So you kind of have to figure out if you like collaborations too at the same time. And the only way to know is to do it.
To do it, yeah. And I did a collaboration one time that was just absolutely miserable. The guy kept changing the story. He kept like macking on my designs. I did a few pages, and then he'd go back. And finally, I just told him, like, there's the door. I don't want to deal with you. I had to do that. Because it was just driving me nuts.
Yeah.
And so that kind of solidified my working solo thing for a while.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, if the collaboration doesn't work, there's no point in forcing it, right?
Yeah.
That's very true. Huh. Okay. Well, yeah, that's very interesting. I've collaborated on a few projects myself. I've worked with a few different artists, and it as from a writer's perspective, it's always wonderful getting new pages in from an artist. So that's why I prefer. That's why I like to work with collaborate in that manner. I think Nana, you kind of touched on it. You're working on your own art, but you still like to collaborate because it can be a fun process when it works.
Yeah.
It's a high that I'll never forget.
Right. Yeah.
Getting my script for the first time. And I think that's why I still hold on. Like, there is still just a little special place in my heart for collaborations, because when I did my pilot chapter with Swevin, I worked with an artist and an editor, and it was a really great experience at the end to see it finally come together. But I can recall that being the only time out of all the collaborations that I did where I felt, wow, like, look at this. So and that's a me thing. You got to find what works for you. If you want to be the creative bear and take it all on, it is a big responsibility. So, but you are the only one stopping it at the end of the day then.
True.
Another big thing that I have encountered with collaborations is getting ripped off, and I'm not afraid to talk about it now. Watch who you are investing into, because I have been in situations where my money was stolen. I have not received artwork. I have been in situations where my artwork was not what I paid for. So beware of some of the bad things that can happen. And again, this isn't in every situation, but it's good to kind of know some of the bad collaborations you could get yourself into.
True. Yeah, it's very, especially if you never worked with an artist before, or if you're not familiar with their reputation, or anything like that. It's always good to be careful with those kind of things. There are various ways you can protect yourself, whether it be with a contract or a half payment, and a half payment upon completion, various, etc. There can be ways to help out with that. But definitely, artist and creator both should protect themselves when they can in that way. Because it can go both ways as well. I've had like you said, Nana, I've had it where I paid someone and didn't get the art, but an artist can also not get paid for art that they create. So it can go both ways that way in certain situations.
And I just feel like there's this big stigma on writers a lot, and I just now that I have lived both, I see what both put into it, and both put in a great bit of work. And I saw on Twitter the other day that someone was like, no, I don't just write my script and send it off to my artist. I actually do the lettering. And I'm just like, wait a minute. Well, you doing the script is a good bit of the work.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do it the way that I write a script, I mean,
Right.
I guess it just depends on how you write a script. But
Well, it depends on the script too. But I did even the bare minimum. Like it's not nothing. It is work. Like
yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree that it's important.
Especially if you're the type of writer, like Michael, like how he said that he looks up, he spends days researching, and I'm also very similar as a writer. So, that's a lot of work sitting there and researching to build these amazing characters.
You're kind of stepping into an area of what defines a writer and a creator, something that I kind of stumbled into myself and didn't really realize how much goes into that creator part. Like a writer, they write the script, they hand it off, they're done with the project, they can go on and write something else. Creators, you build your team, you market, you get the funding, you pay the artist, you give them feedback, you're there from beginning to end. And that's a big thing. And I don't think a lot of people understand the difference between, I didn't even really understand it until I was having a conversation with someone about, what that really means.
And even kind of go further than that, kind of like what Nana was saying, like even just creating the story alone, like I know a lot of people who spent half a year or more just working on the story before they even started writing a script. No one talks about that kind of work that goes into it. Yeah.
Guys, I'm just going to bring up a show that just literally blew up, Squid Games. The writer of Squid Games.
Oh, that was amazing.
The writer of Squid Games wrote that show for 14 years. Don't tell me putting in effort in a story isn't work.
Oof.
I don't, and like then I hear these people, and I'm sorry to get off topic, we're kind of in writing a little bit, but I really dislike these people who are like, oh, you could write about whatever you want. It's fiction. No, you think all them games and Squid Games were fiction? They were actual childhood games. This is real.
That's interesting. Yeah. It's like I can't remember who said it, but I'm sure it's often said. But anything that is worth doing takes time and patience.
Yeah. But there's also the crap or get off the pot thing too.
That's true. There's a fine balance, right?
Yeah.
Definitely. That's funny. In the chat, we've got Matt Bryan says try 10 years for the story before script, and Clip says I've been working on my current story for 7 years. So yeah, totally a lot of time can go into. I know the sport guys have been working on theirs for more than a decade now at this point. So yeah, definitely a lot can go into that kind of stuff.
Is it weird that I feel like I'm doing something wrong when people say
that? No, not necessarily. Every story takes, every writer and story takes their own time and their own process. I feel like not everyone's going to do it the same way, and there's no right answer for everyone.
Yeah, some stories come to you, overnight, and some stories you pick away at and carve from the marble over several years. Just depends on the story.
So true.
maybe I'll get to my carved from the marble story. I don't know. Sometimes I think I don't have a rational head when it comes to this, and I just feel comfortable and jump.
Hey, that's kind of there's another thing I know I've said this on podcasts before, so pardon me if I say this too much, but it's like there's like a difference between a pantser and a plotter, whereas like a plotter will like detail every detail of their story out beforehand, and a pantser is living by the seat of their pants, where they'll kind of just let the story lead you where it goes, kind of thing. I tend to be a mix of both, but
I'm a plotter if there ever is.
I'm a plotter, but I'm a fast plotter. If that makes sense.
You're a plotter with someone in line behind you.
Yes. It's like, oh, I gotta get this out here.
Yeah.
Gotta get this out quick.
Okay.
But I don't know. I think Drew could kind of, I think she did right there. But sees more of the backstage process. And the other day she was asking me, oh, I gotta go check on something. I'm like, if you're looking for this, I already made sure it was there.
See, that's being in harmony with your artist and writer. The more you work together, the more you get to know each other and what you expect from one another, the style that you want. Like, sometimes it can be really rocky, but at the same time, it can be really great to have someone that could kind of finish the end of your sentence on what you wanted to see.
Interesting, yeah.
I definitely feel like a good relationship is very important for collaborations, and I can't express that enough.
That's true. Matt and I, Matt unfortunately had to go out. He did have to leave. He says bye everyone, but he's, like I said, was my first collaborator, and we've become really good friends. And it's just, I always enjoy working with him on the project. Like, anytime we get to go back and work on a new chapter, it is always just a blast.
Yeah,
it's
so
reason.
fun. To get to spend time together. And I know, like, me and my editor, we have collaborated so much that he has worked his way into my creative process, and now it's starting to happen with the illustrations. Like, now he's working his way in there. So you definitely want to have your creative friends. They're very important because they're going to see things that you can't. And again, you as an artist, whether that be a writer or an illustrator, need to take advice. Being narrow-minded in this won't get you very far.
That's true. That's a good advice for almost any endeavor. I feel like is really going with open mind always is a benefit for sure.
Well, I was gonna say, since we're talking about collaborations, maybe we should ask Doug what he's been working on for Jeremy.
You got anything cooking up, man, that you can share? Any news that you can share with us at this time? Remember, Jeremy's in the chat, so anything you say is being monitored.
Jeremy, what should I say? Please help me.
well, let's go with I'm curious where we're at on Movie Men 2.
Dun dun dun.
The artwork is done. I think Jeremy still has to get me the dialogue for it, and that shouldn't take me too long to set that in. What else?
He just spilled the beans, by the way. He just spilled the beans.
Spill the beans. Well, let me say, drawing Sporkman, sorry, was incredibly fun. Great character. He's just a lot like my Flying Ferret character. And that's just been really fun to draw him, and especially that Spork. I
really,
it's different, and I keep like running into logistics in my brain. I'm like, how's he gonna fit in the van? How is he? Where's this go? Where's this van go?
Oh, that's
I
great.
think they did that in Sporkman Goes to Japan. He like gets into a limo
really?
and they have to open the sunroof so it can
That's great. Yeah, that for those who don't know, Sporkman 2 or the Movie Men 2 is going to be a collaboration, or not sort of collaboration, but more of a crossover, you could say, of the Sporkman and the Movie Men universes colliding. And so Sporkman is joining the pages of Movie Men 2, and I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's very very neat. The premise to get him in there and stuff. And
oh, good! I'm so glad.
So that means there's supposedly a Sporkman movie, according to the Movie Men universe. So,
Yeah, I wonder what that could lead to. Perhaps something for the Movie Men to tackle. Perhaps, I don't know.
Yeah.
No, that's excellent. I'm very excited for that. I know we've been looking forward to that, and so that'll be very cool to see.
Yeah, and I felt like my art improved on that one. There's some great scenes of on the streets of Bellingham that it makes me want to go to Bellingham to check this. I want to see Chestnut Avenue or Chestnut Street. I think I want to go down there and see it. So,
oh yeah, totally. Yeah, just like kind of like Nana was saying, that really get that sense of being there, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
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 Oh, that's
That's
great.
so awesome. Good for you. Congratulations.
All right,
Thank you.
what's the other thing that Jeremy is alluding to?
There's another thing. Oh man, tell them the other thing. He says.
Nobody's puppet. The interesting story about a boy who inherits his grandfather's the ventriloquist dummy, and it's imbued with powers and only works when it's on his hand, and that's been interesting to draw to. That's again another city that I wouldn't mind go see. To see some of these bridges. I drew all these bridges. It's like that. That was
Which
kind
city
of
did
fun.
you say was?
Pardon me.
Which city did you say it took place in?
Oh, my brain's got a.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Portland.
You mentioned there was
Portland.
you said it was a good city to visit. Which one were you referring to?
Well,
there?
maybe Portland. I guess
Oh.
I should kind of want to visit it. Just for the
Right,
sites.
right. Oh, okay.
Just for the
That's
sites.
funny. That's fair. That's fair. Yeah, Portland, Oregon. Okay, yeah, definitely. I think I've been through there once before on my way to Washington, I believe, from California over here. But that's excellent. There's a lot of cool projects coming. It sounds like.
Yeah. So
Jeremy's
and then
always
he
got
hinted-
something crazy, man.
What's that?
Jeremy's always got something incredibly unique. He's such a talented writer. I
He
always
is.
love hearing about his new story ideas.
Yeah, he's got all these ideas.
Yes, he really does, man. He's a wellspring of ideas.
Yeah. It's we even talked about doing a webtoons, but I have to put that on the back burner, or because of all the other stuff that I do on my own. It's like I don't have the time, I can't. But the ideas he was coming up with were pretty neat too, because we were inspired by a unfulfilled Kickstarter and we're like, oh, we'll never get that comic. Wouldn't it be fun to do something like that? So it kind of blossomed out of that. But it's like, no, we got to put it on hold or set it aside for now.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah, but you always could come back to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you guys, as artists and creators, do you guys run into that problem where you have more ideas than you have time and money and etc. for?
Absolutely. Oh, dang! I wish I was a millionaire. We wouldn't have to worry about money.
I actually don't when I like Michael said, I'm more of a plotter. So when I have an idea, the ideas stem from that single idea. I can't just come up with this off the top of my head crap. What I mean? Not crap, but yeah, crap, pardon me. But
no, I totally know what you mean. Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like I can't. Like my editor can do that. He's very similar to how you guys were describing Jeremy. My editor can come up with the craziest plots and a one shot. I can't. I am definitely a series girl.
Gotcha.
So my ideas come from. Yeah, I find it so satisfying building a story, and it even comes with the art too. Building that art style to match the vibes of the story. And I just feel like it all just stems from one idea. That I'm like, oh, I could do this and this and this involving this and it's foreshadowing this and this and this and doing that,
Yeah, it's focusing on one saga, one story, and really developing out over a long time. And it's interesting, like if we're kind of just using manga, for example, we kind of see the differences there where like you got your One Pieces, you got your Berserks that are like long form, and then you got your Junji Ito who's like a short story, and then you got everything in between, right? So there is a place for each kind of artist and creator that way.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep things on the back burner and just focus on Wrath. And it's kind of easy when, I'm just scraping by, but, like if we start getting more funding, you might see some more branching out.
Okay. Nice, man. Yeah, I know you got some. I know you've sent me some of your ideas throughout the years. Like still, I got this idea, or I got this kicking around the back of my brain over here. Yeah,
I definitely to say about the ideas on plotting and that I think it's good either way too. One shots or multiple series, like whatever way you can find to be creative, just do it and rock your style, whatever that may be. There's no right or wrong way to do this.
Right.
You're creative and people like it because they like it. There's no rules to it.
Yep.
True, and if you're creating
'Cause-
something that you like, right, people will like that too in general, right?
Like
Yeah.
I've seen on the writers community in particular where they're fighting about what makes you a real writer. Well, I mean, they were fighting about one shots versus series. Well, they were like trying to say that people who build series are better writers than people who create one shots. That's not true.
Mm.
No.
That's not true. You know,
No, I think if you
you're
can write
creative.
one good, solid, one-shot story, I mean, that's, they say some of the best writers are ones that do short stories. If you can just concentrate, into one short story, I mean, that's some really amazing writing. It's sometimes the most memorable is the short while
The real reason why I love multiple layered stories is because I want you to get attached to my characters while you watch them fall.
Oh no! Don't do it to me, Nana.
That's one of my favorite things.
I do love that. Yeah, it is that
love
kind of like
that.
you get to like over like even sometimes years, like you learn to who these characters are, and sometimes you can get really attached to characters that way. So that can be really fun too.
I get very attached.
Yes, me too. I understand. Yes.
Little imaginary people in my head.
All the imaginary worlds that I can go to in my head.
I love setting them up to fail.
Oh no! Oh, that's right.
Because how else are we supposed to grow?
True, right? That's a good point. You can't grow without stumbling every now and then. That's a good point.
And that helps artists draw many expressions. You're welcome.
Yeah, do you have you guys ever tried like looking in the mirror to get some facial expressions, see what that might look like, or anything like that?
I have a funny story relating to that.
Really? Oh my god! You please do share.
So back in the day, we were when I was doing the pilot chapter for my Swebin, we had an issue with a boob.
Uh-oh.
And the boob just wouldn't. We couldn't figure out how the boob actually laid, so we actually had to physically figure out how gravity is working.
Oh my god.
That was funny.
That's interesting discussion, right? That's a that's a very interesting
hilarious.
one.
Hilarious.
Oh my god, that's awesome. Like, but from then on, we never got it wrong again. It was perfect. So
No.
Guess it was good discussion to have. Oh, that's funny. Yeah. But it's actually reminds me of something I kind of actually was going to bring up earlier, which I was watching a behind the scenes on I don't know, some Marvel movie or something. They were kind of just discussing how mocap works and how mocap is used so often in animation because it's so much easier to get lifelike movements, or not even just easier, just how much less time consuming it is. Because it's like a base to go off, and it was kind of like that tracing conversation we were talking about earlier a little bit, like starting with the base and building from it.
Have any of you? Are you guys familiar with the anime Kids on the Slope?
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Yeah.
So Kids on the Slope actually got voted to have one of the best anime musicians of all time because Mappa Studio, which is brilliant. They're brilliant. They actually animated over real people playing the drums and
that's cool.
playing the saxophone or whatever. So I felt like that was really cool.
Wow.
Yeah, rotoscoped animation is really neat.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I never thought of something like that. Yeah.
They've done that with
said that.
They've done that with some Western movies, I believe. Like Scanner Darkly, I think, was done like that.
Scanner Darkly. That's a bit of an older one, right?
Yeah, I think that was a Keanu Reeves thing.
Oh, really? Oh, that's great. He's been in some interesting movies in his early days. Yeah. But no, that's really interesting. Yeah, I had not heard about that they had done that with that animation, but it makes a lot of sense. Like, it's like this video. The reason, that's what it was. I'd read this article about why this video of a robot, these animatronic robots from like this company, couldn't be CG. Like everyone was saying, oh, these are CG, and these visual effects guys debunked it, or rather, they bunked it as they called it. They were like, no, there's no way this could have been CG. Like, there are so many things that go into, making it real, and they were saying if it is, it'd be really top-notch CG. So it's like there are so many things like that, in all
Mhm.
mediums art. I feel like that goes into that kind of thing.
Yeah, like I said, you're using the tools that are given to you.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly.
And in Clip Studio Paint, there's endless amounts of assets that a lot of people probably would be like, well, I could just draw this myself. Well, go ahead, but I mean, do you want to? It's right here.
Right, manga uses it all the time. Like all the screen tones and
Yes.
other the shortcuts and stuff that they use to speed it up is just like precisely that, to save time and make it more efficient. But
And well, what I mean is like, so for example, if you want like an azalea flower, which is like a common flower used in Sweden, there is an azalea flower stamp on the asset store for like 10 clippy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really feel like you need to feel guilty for using that as a tool.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could jazz
Totally.
up the azalea, and they're pretty bare looking. They're not like these assets with these great amount of detail.
Mm-hmm.
They're there to help you, and you can build on that guide.
Interesting, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and like you said, they're there for you to use. Like that is the whole point
Yeah.
of these tools.
It's like Drew. It's like Drew said earlier. It's a public domain.
Mm-hmm.
So
Exactly. They don't put these
it's
things in
fair
without
game.
that. Yeah, that's the whole reason
Yeah.
that they are in there, is because you can use them like that, and
Yeah,
that's why they're so cool. I
exactly.
think, yeah. And there's so many variety of ways you can use them too, like from manga screen tones to these assets. You can use them, you can remix them, you can resize them, you can
Yes.
adjust them. You can use them in so many ways.
If you feel like you're not being creative that way, I mean, like I said, they're very bare for a reason. They're bare so that you can build on them, use them as a
Mm-hmm.
guide, and make it your own way. It's just taking half of the work away from you to have to build the flower, for example.
True, right, exactly.
Yeah, why reinvent the wheel?
Right, exactly.
Exactly. Like if it's
Right.
work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah. And Luna Eclipse in the chat says that they did that with Yuri on Ice too, I think, in terms of what you mentioned with that musical anime. Sounds like they may have done something similar with ice skating. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could totally see that with the way the ice skating movement is very precise and stuff. So yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. But kind of shifting gears a little bit, I know a lot of the artists kind of, it's a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. And so, do you guys ever deal with burnout? Do you ever experience this kind of stuff? And if so, how do you guys like to approach, relieving that?
Yeah, burnout is real. I feel like you'd have to be a very, very lucky artist not to deal with burnout in some way, shape, or form. And everyone kind of recovers from it differently, as long as that recovery is not more drawing.
Nice. Yeah, read a book or go for walks or yeah.
It was a friend of mine described it to me as like the cycle is, working, and then if you can catch it before you burn out, you appreciate other people's art. You find yourself getting inspired by the other things people have done. So take a little break, watch that anime or that film that you've been meaning to watch. Read that webcomic you've kept bookmarked for ages. Expose yourself to new types of art that makes you excited and then invigorates you to keep going forward. Because there's nothing like, just working and working and working and then burning yourself out, and then those types of arts suddenly become like, oh, I could never do that, so making sure to catch yourself before it happens is a skill to learn.
I think the thing is to have other hobbies too, not just something outside. I'm restoring my Volkswagen, and then I just bought a Carmen Ghia here and restoring another one too. So I've got all these things on my plate. So So it's been kind of nice to work on a car, and it's so not
Mm.
art related. It's just hands on. My mind is somewhere else, and that helps. So
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, taking breaks, making sure you have other stuff to do, recuperate your energy and your inspiration. It sounds like all these things are good ways to tackle that.
yeah,
And I experienced a lot of burnout, especially when I was. I've actually realized I was kind of an introvert in the sense that I was getting more burned out with collaborations.
Mm.
And a lot of that had to do with I was trying to, in a situation where you're the creator, so you have everyone to please, and that really burned me out. And I actually still am. I have not wrote anything in quite a few months, mainly because I was burnt out from that. But I'm actually getting the motivation to write my story now that I am designing my characters, and that
Okay.
is coming back. So definitely, I have not been burnt out from art yet. Well, yeah, I kind of have. I mean, it gets it gets exhausting after a day of clip studio paint. It's a mental exhaustion. So definitely separating yourself, and the days that you say you're not going to draw or write, don't draw or write. Keep your distance when you say you're going.
It's very important whenever you're, especially if you're self-employed, but even if you've got, like freelance or contract stuff going on, to set boundaries with yourself as much as with other people.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Like, how do you mean exactly?
Definitely agree with that.
Like, so, if you know that your arm hurts if you draw for more than 6 hours a day, don't let yourself draw for more than 6 hours a day, or you're asking for carpal tunnel,
or to another project you can't handle.
Yeah, if you're already worked to the bone and someone sends you a Twitter DM being like, "Hey man, your art seems great. You want to help me on my project?"
Yeah.
Even if it seems like a really cool deal, if it's more than you can handle, you're just asking for trouble to take more on.
Yeah.
So consider yourself in addition to the work that you're doing.
Yeah.
Like,
because I mean, if you burn out, if you hurt yourself, you're only hurting yourself in the long run. Like, I've heard way too many cautionary tales of artists saying, they pushed themselves too hard earlier on in their career, and now they can barely draw a couple hours a day because they've just hurt their hands so badly.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yep.
Well, that's awful.
Yep.
Wow.
Stretch. Do some hand exercises.
Yeah, really, that's interesting, because that kind of brings up another interesting question. Even just kind of like working digitally, like do you ever get like eye strain, or do you have to kind of deal with that at all?
For sure.
Yeah.
And especially when you're in the beginning of learning, because you're going to feel a mental exhaustion from trying to just learn the program and working the program itself. And then you got to draw on top of it, and then by the end of the day, because I usually draw Monday through Friday, 2 to 11, and I realized that was a lot.
Oh wow!
So
yeah.
I actually went through a period where I didn't draw for a couple of days because I was just so done with it, and frustrated because I wasn't liking a lot of the stuff that I was drawing. So I would definitely say space is very important.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. You can't, like, kind of, because that's the kind of stuff that would lead to burnout, right? That's the overdoing it that does that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Now, do you guys have any kind of routines or settings, anything that you do to kind of get yourself in the, when you're getting down to create, or to do art? Do you have what do you like to do? What setting do you like to have? What kind of tools do you like to have around you?
I used to be like that, where I had to set my mind into a mood, and it had to be a certain setting. Now I just, like, any possible moment I can squeeze some time out of the day, I take advantage of, So
Totally,
I
yeah.
guess saying having a tablet has been very nice, because I used to sit at the computer and draw and never really spent time with my wife. But now with a tablet, I can we can watch programming together. I can sit there and draw.
Oh, that's
You know,
nice.
most of the time I don't know what's happening on TV, but sit there and draw and write and stuff. And so I kind of have to like discipline myself to get in the mood. You know, I have to. I say this has to be done, and I there's no excuses. You know, I can't wait for inspiration to come. I have to do it, you know. And usually the inspiration does come while I'm drawing. Usually when I start getting into it, that's when the mood starts getting.
Gotcha. Kind of, you have to get yourself started and really get into the groove of it that way.
Prime the pump. Yep.
Totally. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Okay.
Because with all the kids I've had over the years, you know, it's constantly busy. I'm the cook in the family, you know.
Oh no.
So it's like I have to squeeze those moments. Those moments are precious. So.
Oh yeah. That's definitely a tough one. Yeah, because like then like having all those other responsibilities on top of it, right? That just makes it more difficult to find that time.
Yeah.
I personally have to draw and write in the same spot. And I have at this point, like in writing especially, I have definitely gotten better at being disciplined with the time that I have, because I also have a son, so and a small son yet, so I have to, when he's at school, I try to discipline myself to make that the time that I'm drawing or writing, and again, taking them days away. But I was gonna say something now. It just slipped from me.
No,
I hate that.
I hate that. Yeah, see if you can remember it. Hopefully, here in a moment. But
I think music's a good help. Music.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Especially
I love
writing. I think it's.
Yeah, I was gonna say I love to listen to music when I write. Like I'll put on something without lyrics or something. Something that I can just like listen to without necessarily engaging too much.
For sure.
Yeah, soundtracks and video game OSTs and stuff like that are my go-to.
Nice.
If I need to like if I need to have something going on. But I have also totally put on a video to like listen to some music and then let it go silent and gotten so lost in the sauce that I just didn't turn any more music on.
Oh no.
Yeah, I've done that too.
Oh my god. That's it when you get in the zone, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like in the zone. You don't even realize the music's not playing anymore.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I love that. Like that is it, and I actually heard a couple artists say, and I have to agree that in writing and drawing, again, it's sort of like spiritual in a sense, and I don't know who's spiritual here or not, but like it's almost spiritual in the sense that when you are that much in the zone, that it just naturally comes to you, and it was meant to happen just the way it did.
Yeah.
So
you've seen the movie Soul, have you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it kind of could relate to that. Yeah.
It's a very great feeling.
Yeah.
Getting lost like that.
Yeah, I totally teared up that movie, man. That definitely hit me in the feels for sure. Definitely a really relatable feeling for sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. That kind of brings us to a really interesting question, which is like, why did you guys want to get into art in the first place? What was it about art that you were drawn to? No pun intended, by the way. That was definitely not intended.
I kind of blame my dad, not because he could draw, but because he couldn't. Because I remember as a real little kid, I brought him a piece of paper and pencil and like, draw me a man, and he drew me a stick figure, and I'm like, no, draw me a real man. And he's like, I can't, you do it. And ever since then, I just wanted to draw peoples and characters, and my mom would bring me comic books and stuff, so I would draw from comic books. Popeye, I think I drew so much Popeye.
Really? Yeah.
It was crazy. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then showing them to friends too. Then they're like, "Oh, that's great. That's awesome. Could you draw this?" And so drawing for friends too. That would just kind of get the desire to draw for friends to impress them. So
Yeah, it sounds like it came out at a really young age, like kind of just building off of what you're, that one moment, and then just kind of building up from there, throughout the years.
yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
For me, I think my parents always encouraged my sister and I to be creative. I have a similar sort of story of like, I remember being really young, and I was by no means any sort of masterful artist, but I at the time I was like focused on drawing things as they were. Like I remember seeing my sister, like if we're drawing like people, like, oh, you're gonna draw mom and dad. It's like I would draw, like they've got a head, they've got a torso, they've got arms and hands. Like they were not well drawn by any means. And then I look over at my sister and she's just drawn a circle with some hands and legs sticking out. And
Yeah.
I remember my parents had to like sit me down and be like, everyone draws things differently. Because I was like, no, that's not right. Where is the body? Where is the neck? So I always loved drawing. I've always been a very just like creative person. So drawing was just my outlet for that. I think I was most drawn to it. I like telling stories, and so that has always been my kind of core driving motivation. But I loved art so much, and I loved like just seeing what people could create. It was like I like telling stories, but I really like when a story has like comes together because of the visuals, when there's something that that whether it be the cover illustration on a book that like shows you what the characters look like, or give you a little sneak peek into what the world looks like and stirs your imagination just enough to kind of keep it going further. That was kind of what drew me to art over, say, writing. And I still enjoy writing, and I still enjoy the other aspects of storytelling, but I think that's just the fact of it being art. Like it's kind of a hard thing to describe almost.
Yeah. No. Okay. I could totally see what you mean there. Yeah.
For me, a lot of my creative ability came from mental illness. I struggled a lot with mental illness my entire life, and I never really had healthy ways of executing those strong emotions and feelings that I had. And I am definitely a writer that comes and that writes from the heart, and that's where I can write my best, as shitty as that sounds.
It's therapeutic.
When I'm in a
Yes. Yeah.
yeah, it was very therapeutic for me. And it kind of worked its way very much into my life as its own antidepressant.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's a pretty incredible story there. Yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, how something like that could actually be helpful in its own way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There were points before I started writing and drawing where I was like having terrible panic attacks to the point where I was in the hospital thinking I was having heart attacks, and they literally occurred every single day almost. And then, being on medication and feeling overly medicated and overly sleeping. And it's something that I look back on now that I wish I would have done then, but I don't know. It all of it stopped. Every bit of it.
Well, I'm very glad you found it, that outlet for that. That's really cool.
Yeah. Thank
that's
you.
Good.
Yeah, it's great. And I feel so much better than I used to. So, and I feel like, it isn't just drawing and art. You could find an outlet with mental illness, but that's just what worked for me. Yeah, that's just what worked for me.
Cool. Yeah, I encourage everyone to try and find something like that. I had a friend who kind of had similar, kind of things where he thought he was kind of like having a heart attack, but it turned out to just be panic attacks, or not just be, but turned out it was panic attacks, and as the cause there. And that's really interesting. I mean, it's really nice to hear that you can channel it out like that and kind of focus it. And because I know totally, I've heard a lot of bad stuff about medication and what that can do, and so that definitely understandable there.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not dissing the medication. If you feel it works for you, definitely listen to your doctors and all the things. But just for me, as ways to kind of because it was getting to the point where just the slight chest pain made me feel like, oh no, I'm gonna have another hospital trip, and that was like enough. It was a very vicious cycle. So now I learn to identify a panic attack before it comes, and I cope a lot better.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's definitely good. I'm glad to hear that.
Thank you.
But it's just kind of just shows you how there's so many different ways to come into art. You know, there's so many different angles to come in from, and then to tackle it with, and so it's just such a versatile thing. Like kind of like we were saying, there's no one way to do it. Art is subjective in that way, or is subjective in that way.
It's one of the most non-judgmental things ever.
Right? Yeah. Yeah, art is pretty amazing.
You just do
it. Now, speaking of, obviously this whole thing has been about art and whatnot, but do you guys, we've talked a little about the tools and the kind of the settings and kind of how you approach different things like that. What do you guys do when you're not writing? Is there any kind of something you like to do after like a long writing session to kind of unwind or relax? You grab a bottle of scotch, and I'm just kidding. Well, unless that's your thing, right? But no, but really, like, what's your kind of go-to to unwind after creating and really kind of putting your all and your full effort into something like that?
Sleep.
I can attest to the power of a good nap.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I'm done for the day. This is it. It's an accomplished feeling.
Right?
Yeah, I feel like you should do something to congratulate yourself because it'll keep you going. Go out to dinner with a friend when you're done, drawing a full comic page, or, have a beer if you want one. Who's judging?
I'm a big fan of like playing video games. Maybe that's just like I just enjoy the like storytelling of doing that, and
yeah,
yeah,
that's a good thing to veg out on for sure.
Yeah, and watching shows or binging something on a streaming service. And I've started getting into cooking. That's been a more recent development. I was recently given a diagnosis for celiac, so no gluten for me anymore.
Oh no.
Which makes going out to eat and buying food a lot more complicated. So I've had to start like cooking my own food, which was kind of, I've never been against cooking my own food, but I started to kind of bring a lot more joy into like experimenting because, like, what are you going to do? You're going to just have to experiment. You're going to have to try new things. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. When you got to make deal with it, not to be too cliche, but when life hands you lemons, you make lemonade, right? So,
yep.
Exactly.
Got to make deal with it. That's interesting. I mean, sorry to hear that, but how
Yeah, I mean, it's not like, oh, you're dying. It's just like, oh, your body attacks itself when you eat wheat. It's like, why would you do that? What's going on here? I saw some really funny video that somebody made of like, eating a tiny speck of gluten, and it's like, alert, lock everything down.
Oh no.
No.
Oh boy, well, that's
it's definitely not. It makes things more difficult in terms of like, you can't stop at McDonald's on your way home from work, but
there's so much. Well, that's the thing. There's so much. People may not realize gluten's in so many different foods.
Yeah, it's in a lot.
It's weird. It's like, why is that in there, huh?
The meat at Taco Bell has gluten in it.
Oh my god.
So, yeah, it makes things more difficult, but it's not. I'm fortunate to live in a time where like it's become a lot more like common knowledge the past 5-10 years. So there's a lot more options out there where like, oh, I can actually have pasta and bread. It's just gluten free.
That is true. Yeah, that is a nice. It's definitely a good thing that there's more and more options for that. Yeah, definitely. That's interesting. Yeah, so no pizza crust, I guess, for you for a while.
Not unless I can find it. DiGiorno makes a really good freezer gluten-free pizza.
Oh, nice.
Like the first time I tried it, it was like, wow. I checked the box because I didn't believe it was gluten-free, and then like sure enough, so alternatives exist. You just gotta find them.
Oh man, that's good. Yeah. Hey, Doug, how about you? Do you got any kind of wind down routines, anything like that?
I think I watch how-to YouTube videos, like
Okay.
like with my Volkswagens. I'm always finding
Oh
to
yeah,
strip
yeah.
paint off a body, or
Okay, yeah, totally, yeah.
something like that.
Going right back to YouTube, man. It's that useful resource right there.
It really is. Yeah, yeah,
You can find almost anything on there.
yeah. It's been really helpful. Meet a lot of interesting people too,
Yeah, I bet, yeah.
in a roundabout
Well,
way.
well, we are getting close to the end of our time here, so we'll start wrapping up soon. I did want to ask, we talked. I did ask you guys to give advice for new writers, but is there anything else you might want to say to artists out there, anyone who are looking for advice, anything like that, or anything you might want, last words you might want to say about that kind of thing?
I think one thing is don't take harsh criticism. I've seen this a lot now on like Facebook and stuff, where these people just rag on budding artists or people who are barely there to a level that they would prefer, and they get criticized. And it just, I mean, I haven't been there. Well, criticism people was unnecessary, and I took it to heart. And it's like, don't take the harsh criticism so much. There's a lot of people praise you will get for your artwork too. It's like, look for the good too. That's what I would say to artists.
Yeah,
Don't beat
definitely
yourself
don't
up.
let criticism do that to you, for sure.
Yeah, yep. Everybody
You're-
has value.
Mhm. You're in a world where everyone also has an opinion, so
Yeah,
just don't take it so softly, and in the end, listen to the advice around you. Maybe change your perspective. If you can't handle criticism, I just don't think creative fields are for you. And I say that a lot, and that sounds harsh, but it's true. You're in a type of community that we help each other. It's not always a criticism. A critique is not a criticism.
I was
all the
about to say,
time.
there's a difference between critique and criticism.
Mhm.
And there are going to be people
Yes.
out there who just throw around criticism because they're negative people. But there are also
Right.
going to be people who
Exactly.
give you constructive critique. And, learning to kind of differentiate those. And even if someone gives you a harsh critique, not letting that reflect as like, you're a bad person or you're a bad artist. It's like, you just have, you have to learn. You have to get better. It's not a reflection on your worth.
Yeah.
No, exactly.
Right, I guess you got to learn to roll with the punches a little bit and take the criticism where it
develop
is.
some thick skin.
Exactly. That's kind of the way I wanted to explain it earlier as well. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and also learn to notice, where those critiques versus the criticism is. When is it useful? When is it just being, is it too much here? Is this really helpful for me? Definitely. But like you guys are saying, I think it's a good idea not to take it too personally. At the end of the day, I think it's always a good idea. Just any kind of social media, any kind of thing like that, endeavor like that, it's a good idea not to take it too personally, but still take it. Still listen. Don't you know what I mean?
Yeah,
I think that's good advice.
You can listen to it. You don't have to take it.
Right, exactly. Take what you feel is good for you, right? I think I want to say it was Bruce Lee or someone like that said essentially like learn from like essentially paraphrasing, but like basically learn from other people and take it and add what makes you unique to it, and that's what what makes you do the best.
Yeah.
So that's great advice. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us on this panel. It's been really interesting, really informative. I've had a great time with you guys the last couple hours. Why don't you guys tell us a little bit about where people can follow you online and maybe tease any projects you guys are working on or have coming up? And go ahead and start. Well, I'm gonna go clockwise again. Doug, we'll go ahead and start with you.
Yep, got the Movie Man 2 obviously coming out, and I'm sure Jeremy's going to at some point start crowdfunding. I'm going to try to be more helpful with him or towards him than I was with the last one. I was just so busy and stuff. But this one I'm trying to learn, and probably more for myself for when I get projects going. But other than that, I've got my Flying Ferret and Slammer comic on Webtoons, and there's always something else around the corner. Something I'm probably forgetting, but that's there. Oh, and Nobody's Puppet. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. That was fun.
You're very welcome.
Yep.
And Scott, why don't you throw us what you got coming out here?
Oh, I was just gonna say you can follow me on Twitter at Kishkuman, but I'll let Drew plug our project.
Sweet.
Yeah, so Scott and I have chapter 3 of Wrath coming out for a Kickstarter campaign at the end of the month. So Halloween, mark your calendars, it's Wrath time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I've been up to. I've got some personal projects going on for myself. Not sure when those will actually be seeing the light of day, but you know, I do just freelance art. So if you're someone needing some art and you're looking, for someone to help you out, I do illustration and concept art. You can see some of my stuff on Twitter. It's at Druzel_, because at Druzel is a dead account that I can't get the URL of.
Oh
so,
no.
Curse you, Drew Rodriguez. He's got the DeviantArt too.
Oh, that's
but yeah, I'm I'm Druzel or Druzel Draws or something like that on most social media. I think there's a link to my link tree on my Twitter if you're interested in following me other places. Yeah, so that's what's been going on with me, and I'm excited. There's been a lot going on with Wrath Chapter 3, and we've got most of the pages at least sketched out now, so it's been really cool to see it all come together, and I'm super excited to share it with you guys come the end of the month.
Yeah, we're really excited for that. As Neostar Production says, the wrath is upon us. That's gonna be very excellent to see. I know a lot of people are looking forward to that one. So, definitely exciting. And Nana, where can people follow you, and anything you want to plug real quick?
So right now things have been a little quiet on my end, but you can still look at the pilot chapter for Swevin. It's on INKR Comics, and we have a new studio. Updates are a little bit slow right now, but it's Ichigo Comics, Ichigo Studios, and starring cover is almost done. Juan started it, and it's looking really good, and it's almost done, and I hope we're gonna print finally soon.
Very cool. Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait
So
to hear
that's
more
just
about that.
kind of.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna be dropping an illustration hopefully very soon of one of my original characters for Swevin. So that's kind of a big deal.
Awesome. Yeah, that's one you've been working on, right?
Yeah, I've been working on this
Nice.
for a month, and not because of not because I'm slow, but because I'm really taking my time and developing how I want my characters to look. I feel like that's a big thing for me. So
Right, I totally get that. Like, you want to make sure they have that identity to themselves, make sure they're unique and feel like the character you wanted them to be.
yeah,
Yeah,
for
totally.
sure. And I'm also playing around with different art styles, and those types of things. So we're doing a lot of very slow background things when it comes to Swevin. It's very much a working progress right now.
Well, that's really
But
excellent. In the chat, Nicholas says, "Can't wait, Nana."
thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you all for joining us. This was a lot of fun. I hope we get to do another one of these artist editions here soon. These are always a blast. I'll go ahead and plug Matt since he had to dip out. He, of course, is an artist, and he's always looking to collaborate. So if you have any commissions or want to collaborate on something, you can hit him up at Matt_B_SULOS at Twitter. That is where you can hit him up, and he's always doing some cool stuff over there. And of course, you can follow us at Wikid Publishing on Twitter and all that good stuff. Well, thank you again for hanging out in the chat. We had a lot of cool people in the chat today asking a lot of great questions. So thank you guys for hanging out with us today. We really appreciate it. And again, if you're watching on the replay, we appreciate you as well. Give us a like, a retweet, a follow. Anything you can do really helps us out. And we will see you guys on a further episode of the Wikid Beacon podcast. Everyone have a great night.